Well, good day, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited about today's Rock Advisors webinar topic, and that's marketing strategies and driving cash flow using inbound marketing. We have two experts joining us today, and we're really pleased to have them. Happy to introduce Steve Ballantyne, who is the co-founder of Neighborhood Buzz. Steve, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we've got Steve's bio up here. Steve co-founded Neighborhood Buzz about 3 years ago, and he's got a presentation for you today, and we've got, again, some great information. And joining us as well is Jason Leonard from Landlord Web Solutions. How are you, Jason?
Great. Thanks for asking, Jim, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure to have you here. And of course, well, Jason is the co-founder of Landlord Web Solutions, specializing in website design and online marketing. And Jason's also going to have a great presentation for us. So thanks to you for joining us, everyone. As we were discussing today's topic with Jason and Steve, they corrected me and said that social media perhaps isn't the correct terminology when we're talking about this particular topic, and in fact it is inbound marketing, and inbound marketing encompasses all kinds of things, including social media, and well, I'll say as a neophyte, I'll say that all things web. That may or may not be a misnomer, but again, we've got the experts here to sort of point us in the right direction. And what's really appealing to myself in this comment goes to both Steve and Jason is that, both of these experts understand our business. They understand the real estate business. They understand property management, rentals, etc. So this is of particular interest, obviously, to the folks that are listening in. So, Steve, you are up first with your presentation. Take it away. What can you tell us?
Well, yeah, thanks, Jim. I just want to thank you again for having me on the show, and we always love working with Rock Advisors, whether it's through webinars or through your events. So a big thank you for that. And yeah, to speak to what you were saying before, we do hear, we still hear the term social media thrown around quite a bit, and for some people it's a good thing, and for other people it's not. And what we found is we started out doing strictly social media 3 years ago, and we realized fairly early on that social is just a small piece of a much larger picture of internet marketing that's now called inbound marketing. And we can go to the first slide actually to dive right into what inbound marketing is, to kind of turn it from a foreign phrase to something that's familiar. The reason people talk about inbound marketing today is it's increasingly being viewed as the best way to capitalize on the way consumers make buying decisions right now. It doesn't matter if you're like Jim, if you're a neophyte, if you don't like web marketing or social media at all. Everyone knows that the buying process and the way people come about making purchasing decisions has changed drastically in the past 10, even 5 years, with the rise of mobile devices, with the rise of social, and everyone is trying to figure out how to give consumers the experience they want, so that at the end of the day they will choose them over their competitors. So that's what we're really here to talk about today, is how property management can stand out from their competition and pull people in a way that's not obnoxious or interruption based, and can help that person through their buying process, and at the end of the day create not just a customer but also a fan of their brand.
A fan of their brand. That's yeah. I've never heard that term before, but that's very important.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that deeper, but really what we're going to be touching on is with social, the influence that companies have has diminished, and the influence that people have has increased. And there's been lots of surveys where I believe 92% of people trust the recommendations of friends and family over any marketing message they'll see from a company. So the idea of inbound is to turn your tenants into fans and essentially get them to do the marketing for you, because they can do it better and more effectively and more cost effectively than we can do it, by creating a flashy ad or a billboard or a video or whatever.
Right.
So inbound marketing just breaks down into 4 strategies, as you can see on the chart here, and it's just about attracting, converting, closing, and then delighting your customers. A few examples that we would all be familiar with. Old Spice did a great job of this years ago with their viral videos around the Old Spice guy, right? That's this buff guy who's in these hilarious videos, and
Right.
and if you think about the power of those campaigns where they created this video and then everyone else did the marketing for them, right? Everyone wanted to be the first one to post the new Old Spice guy video and show all their friends how funny this was. Another company doing a great job of inbound marketing right now is Red Bull. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the Red Bull videos. Probably their most popular one was
Where there's that fellow that I guess he was not skydiving, but he was actually falling in from outer space kind of thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. He was skydiving. So what they do, what Red Bull does, is they've just focused on producing interesting content. That's all they do. They don't advertise. They just get their athletes to do really crazy stuff, slap their logo on it, and the world does the rest, right? The people do the marketing for them by sharing it all over blogs and all over their social media feeds.
Right.
Starbucks is another great example of doing this, and they've really used digital. And in our own industry, there's examples around, I think, Oxford Residential, who is a client of ours. We've seen lots of success with them on social media. I think Greenland, who is not a client of ours, I think they do a great job on social. They're really good at kind of sharing resident stories and experiences. And then if we look to the States, one that stands out to me is Bozzuto Group. Are you familiar with Bozzuto?
Never heard of them. Jason, have you heard of them?
I've heard of Bozzuto Group, yeah,
Yep.
out of Washington.
Yeah, they do a great job. And if anyone would want to see examples of property management companies doing really well on social, just fire me an email. It's at the end of the presentation. Would love to send you some examples. So if we could just move to the next slide, we're just going to quickly paint the picture of the situation for Canadians in 2013. In a nutshell, Canadians love being online. Here's 45 hours per month, billions of searches, and 49 billion spent online. And the question that we often ask clients is, how much of that are you seeing? How much of that is driving business to your bottom line?
Those are huge numbers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm just amazed. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Wow.
They love the internet. Maybe it's cold and we're inside and we don't have anything else to do. I don't know. But
Yeah, wow.
we love being online.
I'm in the wrong. I should be on the other side of this call. Okay.
So the problem that we often see is traditional marketing channels being relatively costly and becoming less effective for property management. An anecdote that I love to share is a while back, a client came to me that was looking at our products and said, we've seen a number of leads from print go from 45% of all our leads down to 5% in the time span of 5 years.
45 to 5%. That is a big number.
Yeah.
Wow.
They've just literally just fallen off a cliff, and they're trying to figure out.
Wipe print out completely.
Yeah, and that just speaks to the changing landscape of how people find products and services they want to find. So
if you're not becoming adept at using this platform, you're gonna be left out in the cold.
Well, it's already happening,
Yeah.
and hopefully we'll be able to highlight that a bit clearly here. So we have with traditional marketing channels, at the end of the day, you're paying for the attention of someone else's audience. So, let's go way back to the 80s when you put in a listing in the newspaper. Essentially, you're paying for the eyeballs of that newspaper's audience, right? That's not your audience, that's their audience. And at the end of the day, once your ad is gone, they still have that audience, but you have no residual value. Your value is gone. So we'll get into a little more into that. More renters are Gen Y, also known as digital natives. So, whether for someone like you, Jim, who isn't as familiar with the digital space, these kids, if you have children, I'm sure you can understand they have grown up in this world. They're very comfortable in this world. And some might even say they're addicted, where there's actually been some challenges around kids who want to be connected all the time, and it's not actually healthy, right?
What's really funny, Steve, is that my 2-year-old daughter can navigate around the iPad to YouTube, to whatever game she wants. It is unbelievable to watch her, and you're absolutely right. It's second nature to them.
Yeah, it's so these people who are used to the instant information, the real-time information, on-demand information, they're looking at things like newspapers, and it's old news, right? Things that took time to be printed and then shipped, and then they sat, and then I picked it up. This is already 8 to 10 hours old. There's already been a stream of information on the internet that's more updated than what I'm reading here, and they don't feel that it's as relevant. The other problem with using traditional marketing is consumers are increasingly ignoring marketing interruptions, which means, let's say you're watching your favorite show, and then the commercials come on. That's an interruption, right? You're driving down the road, you're enjoying some beautiful scenery, and then there's a big billboard. That's an interruption to your driving experience. So because we've been bombarded with interruptions our whole lives, people are tuning it out. They don't even see it anymore. It doesn't even exist. So this is a big problem us marketers have been facing for a while. And Jason, I'm sure you've seen this. Even on the web, we have similar challenges, right, where people tend to ignore banner ads. When you look at those heat maps of where people are looking on a page.
Absolutely. I mean, click rates and attention on banner ads is relatively low, and it's even kind of funny. I had some experience with placing some print advertising when I was on the property management side, and a really funny thing happened. Line ads in the classifieds versus display ads. You would think the big, $4,000 display ad, because it's big and it's an interruptive type advertising, that we get more attention and more phone calls, when in fact the little line ads got about a 4-to-1 response rate for a mere fraction of the cost. And I kind of equate that to people are there looking for content. They're reading the classifieds and ignoring the box ads. So it's the same idea, right? Even though you're selling or marketing the exact same piece of information, and you think this big ad should grab someone's attention, they're treating that like it's advertising, and therefore it's interruptive, even though they're just trying to get your attention, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, because they have the intent, right? They're looking at the classifieds. So what this all speaks to is a new phrase that I would love the listeners to remember that captures all advertising. It's called POEM. And POEM. So it's at the title at the top there. It's paid, owned, and earned media. So this is a relatively new phrase.
I think it was fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a new phrase coming out of the U.S. And what this little infographic shows is examples of paid, examples of owned, and examples of earned types of media. But more importantly, if you look along the bottom, the type of person looking at those media, that's what matters, right? When you're interrupting, when you're the billboard on the side of the road, that person is usually a stranger to your company, right? They don't know who you are. When someone has come into a shop and maybe picked up your brochure, or they've sought you out on the internet, and they're familiar with your company, maybe they've dealt with you once or twice, we're moving into the owned region, and that's where we tend to have customers. Right? And to speak to what we were saying earlier, what Neighborhood Buzz is trying to do with our content for our clients is we're trying to move people into the fan section, right?
So, just to use a layman's terms, and this is the first time I've really seen this and tried to understand it as I look at it, but it almost seems as though we're developing real relationships here, not just customers. I mean, it would seem to me that fans perhaps can also be friends. That be appropriate to say?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And it's interesting because property management is in a very unique situation where they're not only providing a product, they're also providing a service. And these people, these tenants are very, very invested in the product and service that property management is providing. And traditionally, we only have seen sort of emergency channels of communication, right, between the landlord and the tenant. The landlord's only talking to the tenant when the rent's overdue, and the tenant's only talking to the landlord when their sink is leaking or the heat isn't working, right? And the that type of communication over and over, you're going to get a stressful relationship. Like that's just, you can't communicate with someone on an emergency basis time and time again and keep feeling kind of good about that person. So what we're doing with content marketing is we're opening up a dialogue between the landlord and the tenant that is much more casual, much more helpful, and more relationship building, so that the landlord can kind of become sort of the neighborhood concierge, kind of the neighborhood expert, the building expert who knows what's going on, and the tenant is able to approach them with much more casual concerns, like, hey, when do you guys usually turn the AC on? Or, when are the fountains coming on this year? Or,
before you jump ahead there, I can maybe just point to or talk very quickly about the owned part of it, because it does mention websites there, and I think this is absolutely true. It's something that we teach landlords all the time, and that is that when you have your website and your website is growing online and it's finding its place in the search engines and the Google organic results, and you're finding your fans that are driving traffic to your site, you earn that traffic. But what's interesting about it is like the example you talked about earlier, where once you've paid for that media, the media company still owns the media, but you have to buy it again if you want more of it. Well, with your website, once you build your traffic level to a certain level, it becomes very consistent and predictable, and it actually becomes one of those situations where you can kind of rely on it because you own that traffic flow. And we see it time and time again where clients build a website and they go into it with very low traffic, but as they invest over time in building that traffic base, they start to own more and more traffic, and I like to call it the gift that keeps on giving, because it doesn't cost you a lot of money to keep that traffic flowing and keep those leads coming in through your own channels, the channels that you own, not the media companies.
Yeah, exactly. Jim, if the listeners take one thing away from this presentation, what I'd love for them to understand is you can start treating marketing the same way they treat their buildings, right? You can treat marketing as an asset.
Absolutely.
That continues to grow in value over time. And that's why we have our little tagline on the bottom there, building marketing assets, which I thought was clever, but I don't know if anyone else does, because there's a bit of a double entendre there. But
yeah, no, I think that's great. So treat marketing as an asset.
Treat it as an asset. Expect it to grow in value over the long term, not something where
That's
you
fantastic.
get a quick hit when you need it.
Sure.
And there's,
sure.
Okay, so we'll keep rolling here. The implications of using traditional versus inbound, and I'll continue to kind of fly through these. You have less data when you're using traditional. So it's more difficult to measure ROI. You're often making blind decisions. So one thing that I'm sure Jason's in the same boat, we focus heavily, and every month we're giving our clients data, right? Reports, monthly reports that show them what's happened that month and what insights we've gleaned from that activity and how we can make it better into the future. It's much more difficult to do that with traditional marketing. Another thing you want to keep in mind is losing control. Management, if they're not engaging actively online, essentially they're tenants, and unfortunately it's usually the angry tenants will be the ones in control of their online reputation. So we want our clients to be on top of that and in control, and dictating that story about their brand, and not in control, on Bedbug Registry or my.ca or the other review sites, where there's lots of management companies out there with terrible reviews and they have no idea. They have no idea that it's out there, and potential customers are finding that in their research phase and deciding not to go to that building or not to use that company.
That could just be killer.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah. So the other thing is less than ideal tenants. So if you think about it, it's a different type of person that's searching for your property on their $800 smartphone walking around the neighborhood than necessarily someone that's kind of grabbing something at the bus stop, right? Grabbing a magazine or whatever. Where most of our clients are looking for, the high-end tenant that has a stable income, and sometimes just having a cell phone can be a predicator of that. So we're looking to attract the high-tech people. And then the last point I just want to make here is when you're doing the paid media, you can experience higher turnover with less referrals, because it goes back to what you were saying, Jim, about if you're building those relationships with your tenants.
Yes.
You should be able to lower your turnover, and your tenants should be doing more marketing for you. So there's some real bottom line implications there. If you can do it well, you should be able to save a lot of money.
Right. Good information.
Okay, so we're coming up to the end here, Jason. I'm going to hand it over to you pretty soon, just 4 more slides. So, we're talking about these things, and what I wanted to do in this one is show exactly what this looks like, right? So how do you use inbound marketing to improve your building's bottom line through attracting, converting, closing, and delighting? Some of the services that you can do to do that are you would use blog content or sites, right, to attract those people. So people are searching around the web, they're looking for what you're offering, and you want to have as much content out there as you can to attract them and start pulling them towards you. Now, once they've found you, you want to give them the type of experience they're looking for, and that can be anything from having a beautifully designed site with up-to-date pictures and video. And I know Jason would understand even things like the speed at which your website loads. It has to be fast, right? If someone's coming from a mobile device, your website has to be mobile compatible, or you're going to lose those people, right? So you attract them, you convert them, and then once they've closed and they've become a tenant, we use things like e-newsletters to stay in touch and let them know what's going on in the community, and also remind them of the referral programs that are in place at the building to, again, encourage that fan type of customer so that they will do the marketing for you, and also being on social media and making it easy for them to share your listings or your property across their social channels. So this is just a quick quote I grabbed from HubSpot. I'm sure everyone can read it. What really stood out to me was inbound is often more cost efficient than old school, and inbound is often better at building long-term customers rather than short-term sales. So that comes with, there's pros and cons to everything, and I think the downside of inbound, and one thing I'm always very clear with our customers is you can't expect results overnight, right? And I'm sure Jason sees this with the websites as well. These things can take some time, but it's more than worth the investment. And as Jason was saying, it does become the gift that keeps on giving, but you don't see that traditional kind of blast that you do with traditional marketing. It's a bit of a longer haul.
Sure, and just to bring up a point you made earlier, as it relates to the implications. I mean, you can't lose control of this, and so to our guests that are listening, you really have to manage this process, right? You just can't leave it alone. To your point.
Yeah, you're doing your bottom line a disservice by leaving it alone at this point.
Right.
This is just a quick stat, just about how companies with websites using inbound marketing tend to have 100% improvement on conversion. So what that would mean for property management is when you're producing valuable content around your buildings and around the communities your buildings are in, you should be able to expect twice as many people calling you or filling out an email inquiry, actually inquiring about living at your buildings, as opposed to if you just do nothing. You just kind of have a little bit of information.
Great. So to sum things up.
Yeah. So to sum things up, with inbound, we're seeing a stronger ROI than traditional. We're seeing inbound really, take over. Companies like mine didn't really exist 3 years ago, and now we have a thriving business. And just that traditional is fading. We heard the stat from a client of mine where they went from 45 to 5%, and we're also seeing the growth of inbound year over year is huge. It's really becoming a huge thing for marketers. And then the last thing I'd want to say in summary is just to remind people about the POEM, the paid, owned, earned media.
Yes.
And to be doing everything you can to move into the owned and the earned media to create those fans.
Right.
And I think, Steve, I can add to that. I mean, even our own company, we've been around for a little over 3 years. We exist almost entirely in the owned and earned arena. Everything we do, or certainly 98+% of what we do, is inbound marketing. We practice it to a T, using exactly the things that you talked about here, the staying in contact with customers and reaching out to prospects and using e-newsletters and using social and using the various channels, but rarely is it ever paid channels.
Right. So yeah, Jim, that pretty much sums it up for me.
Well, that was an eye-opener. Great presentation. And just to go back to the slide, for those that are with us today, what are you waiting for? Don't wait. You've got to jump on this. I mean, billions and billions are using this platform. And for those that have questions or would like to get in touch with Steve, please don't hesitate to call Steve. That's his contact information. I'll leave that up for a couple seconds before we delve into Jason's presentation. Steve, fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. And I can honestly say to those that are with us today, Steve's a great guy, knows what he's talking about, and you're in good hands. Jason, what a beautiful, beautiful picture. I'm assuming that's your little girl.
That's my daughter. Actually, that picture's a year old. She was just a year at that time. That was on our first Father's Day.
But she just
celebrated her second birthday last Monday, so pretty exciting time.
Yeah, well, congratulations and a belated happy birthday to her. So let's get going with what you've got to share with us.
Okay, so I want to talk about data syndication, and as Steve mentioned, I mean, the movement of data and the control of content is certainly very important, and syndication is one of the ways that we can facilitate that. And I thought I'd just start with a couple of really obvious examples of syndication, because I don't think people always realize that, all around us, the world really operates in a lot of ways on data sharing and feeds. So when you take a look at, just some very quick, obvious examples. I mean, Interact, you go to a bank machine. Do you ever go to your home bank? Nobody does it anymore, but that information is coming somewhere, from somewhere in real time. You withdraw $200 from your account, and then you walk across the street to a different bank machine. That information is already updated at the next bank machine. So all that information is coming from some central location, and every bank machine in the world is connected to that central data point.
Mm-hmm.
TV programs, and we've just got the example here of PBS, but TV stations today cannot produce enough content all on their own. I mean, you take a look at Global, CTV, even NBC, ABC, all the major networks, they all produce content, but at the same time, resources are such that they cannot produce all of the content necessary to fill a 24-hour time slot. So what a lot of these guys do is, of course, they buy shows that are in reruns on syndication, or they buy, they buy first-run shows, but they buy the rights to them from some other network, and they link up via satellite typically, and that program is fed to them from some other source. And when we look at the newspaper industry, again, it's all the same thing, right? You've got the Toronto Star; they've got a very large newspaper to put together every single day, and certainly they don't have enough writers on staff, nor do they need that many writers on staff to cover what's going on in the world. So a lot of their content comes from other sources around the, from sources like the AP, where they can go and sift through the various topics that are available, and they can pick stories that they want to run in their paper. And that's just what makes them more efficient, and that's really what it's all about. So just very quickly here, a quick definition that we found as it pertains to the web is where web feeds make a portion of a website available to other sites or individual subscribers. And I think that really articulates well what we're talking about for the purpose of apartment owners here today. So, there's certainly lots and lots of benefits as with regard to syndication, but I tried to isolate, sort of three benefits that really, apartment owners get out of managing their data in one sort of location and keeping it simple. So the first thing is consistency and accuracy. I mean, you want to make sure that when you're putting your rents and your dates of availabilities for your properties, photographs, all of this stuff, you want to make sure that it's consistent and it's accurate and it's what you actually want out there on the web. The other, probably the biggest benefit, to be honest, is efficiency. A lot of landlords advertise on multiple websites. And there's certainly great value in advertising on a lot of these listing sites. I mean, they generate the traffic. There's nothing wrong with using them. The challenge becomes when you have to call or email them to, say, hey, here's my new prices, here's my new dates of availability. That's not exactly a model of efficiency. And that's one of the benefits that you can get from syndication. And of course, the final is controlling the content. Steve will probably, say that this, for him, is probably one of the most important things, is that being able to control the message is very important in regards to your inbound marketing strategies. So if we can just go to the next slide. So I was trying to think about a really great example, and I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive here for a second. But I wanted to take a look at an industry that uses syndication on a level that during our research, we actually learned that they actually have the largest data feed in the world, and that's the travel industry. So how I came about this was about a month ago, as I started thinking about this presentation, I was watching my wife do some research about, we're getting ready to take our annual trip, and it's coming up shortly, which we're really excited about. But I was watching her go through the booking process, and if we can jump to the next slide,
wow,
this is what you end up coming across as a consumer. And as I was watching her, she was going from site to site to site. Now the reality is, we probably already had it down to 3 or 4 resorts that we were going to go to anyways. But what ends up happening here is She's looking for best price. She's looking for sites that have better descriptions. She's looking for more photographs, any reviews, as Steve mentioned. She's looking for anything she can find to help isolate which resort it's going to be. And you can imagine for a moment, if you're a hotel operator or a resort operator or an airline, just how daunting this can be if you were actually managing all of your information in a manual format. If you had to call every one of these sites to say, hey, that room's now gone and we only have this many rooms of it.
Oh, you wouldn't have enough time? You just wouldn't have enough time.
You couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It would be fundamentally impossible. So all of these resorts, all of these trip sites, travel agents, airlines, they all subscribe and they all keep their information in a central location, and they update it. If we can go back one step.
Sorry, that looked like my wife.
They keep it all in one location so that that information, when somebody's doing a search, when my wife was doing the search and she's checking, I can't remember which site it was, but when she was checking the various sites she was looking for, the information that she's getting is in real time. It's really available, and that's what consumers are really looking for. And as I said, when we did the research on this industry, we ended up finding out that the data feed that actually runs this particular industry is the largest data feed in the world.
So maybe you can just explain that. When you, and again for us newbies in the room, when you say largest data feed, what does that mean? What kind of metrics are involved when you are measuring data feeds?
Well, in terms of, they're talking about the amount of traffic. That is the amount of data that's being moved around. So,
okay.
So hotels are consistently updating the reservation system, or the central reservation system, and then as the various listing sites and the various travel sites, travel agencies, booking sites are turning around and serving travelers, that information is getting pulled on the fly.
I get you.
And so that information is getting traded constantly, and it's getting updated literally by the second. And that's the way it has to work in the travel industry, because of course you don't want double bookings or overbookings of airlines. You don't want hotels overbooking. So for them, that particular industry, for me, this really illustrated on a grand level why syndication is important, why it works, and how it can be a model of efficiency for a lot of industries. So how does this really, now I'm going to try and bring it all back to, how does this really impact the apartment industry? And I guess, the next slide, has anybody felt like this recently?
Yeah.
And this is sort of how it sometimes feels when you're managing your rental portfolio and you're trying to deal with getting your ads updated. You're trying, there's human factors that sometimes come into play, and it can cause all kinds of frustration. So I thought I'd throw that out there because it's a little bit funny and a lot of people can identify with it. But the reality here is that the Canadian apartment industry today is actually quite inefficient in the way we manage our marketing. There's far too many manual processes that can be substituted electronically and streamline the way we do things. The industry is still labor intensive, and that's not necessarily a good thing. In a lot of cases, we've got very talented marketing people entering our industry, and they're getting stuck in tasks that are actually more administrative in role type. And that's not a good thing, because if you give a talented marketing person a job that mostly consists of calling the various ad sites and saying, here's our new prices, you're going to lose that talent very quickly. So it creates other problems in your organization as well. And then the final thing is you have too many errors. I mean, anytime you have humans dealing with price changes, and you have multiple touch points, your staff member, and then the media staff member, there's far too many there's far too much potential for errors. So often it feels a bit of a funny image, but it really does feel like a scramble to get your your property information out to the listing sites, which ILS, by the way, stands for Internet Listing Site. It's just not a very straight line, easy path to taking care of your marketing. So if we maybe jump to the next screen, this is really more what we're looking for. We're looking for a clear-cut path to get data to the various sites that you work with, and in a lot of cases you're dealing with multiple sites, and that's what really layers or adds to the complication of the whole thing. And as we can see here, if you place your data at the center of your world, and in all honesty, your website is often the center of your marketing, and hence the whole term of inbound marketing. You have all that marketing out there, blogs and social, and in most cases, the traffic is getting returned back to your website.
Mm-hmm.
So placing your data at the center or at your website level and then connecting off of that actually makes an awful lot of sense. Now that can also be replaced with, say, your property management software or other sources. But as a general rule, we see that it works very well from the website level. And then what you ask your third-party services to do is connect into that source of data and simply pull the data from you electronically. So what ends up happening is you go in, you're managing your website, you're changing your prices, you're changing your photos, you're changing your floor plans, your videos, whatever it is you're doing to manage data. And by the way, of course, as Steve mentioned earlier, your website is an asset to the company. It's not an expense. It's something that, and we find this all the time with our clients, that they do treat their website the same way they treat their properties. Once they realize that it has a value, it becomes an asset. So they actually, we find that landlords do a very good job of updating their websites on a regular basis and keeping that data, very, very accurate. So therefore, the third-party services, much like, the example that I gave of the travel industry, the travel industry is looking for the best source of data. Now, mm-hmm. their whole industry is so much more complex, and it needs to be, in split-second, real time. So there's a little more complex. But in the apartment industry, certainly in Canada, it doesn't need to be quite that complex. Pulling data from a source such as your website is perfectly
so Jason,
good enough.
If I can just jump in as someone who's also I'm familiar with data syndication, but I haven't heard the full spiel, which is very informative. So if I am a landlord, what type of data am I entering into the site, and then what type of data is being pulled by sites like Kijiji and Homes.com?
Great question.
I think absolutely. So any data that you're inputting into a system, a central system, that essentially would be used, or the same data that would be seen on your website essentially. So, you take a look at some of the sites that are being, built today by some of the Canadian landlords that are, updating their sites, and you can see that the workup of information is actually quite detailed. They're putting in, complete amenity lists. They're putting in, detailed descriptions of the property and the community. They're putting in, huge photo galleries and videos and floor plans, and mm-hmm. they're making sure that, the rents are being changed. We're seeing this as a growing trend in Canada that, in the U.S., most landlords pull their rents in real time, or what's available in real time, and that's what they display on the listing sites. That hasn't been the case in Canada until recently. That trend is starting to grow, where landlords are saying, what shows on our website and what shows on our listing sites that we advertise on, if it shows there, it's available because we're updating daily, or even 2 or 3 times daily. It can be a little bit more work, but if you're managing that data in one location and you don't have to manually update all your ad partners, it actually becomes incredibly efficient. Mm-hmm. You're controlling, as I said earlier, the 3 key points. You're controlling the content And you're also making sure that everything is completely accurate. You know that when you've updated your central source, whatever source you pick as your central source, by the way, but when you update the content in that central source and your ad partners pull the data from that source, whatever you put into that central source, that's what they will get, and that's what will appear on their sites as well. So you're touching the data once and then watching it spread across the web electronically.
I have another question, Jason, and I think some of our listeners might be able to relate to it because I hear it being bounced around quite a bit. Do you find that your customers are including prices in this data, or are they leaving prices out? Because when we survey the industry, we see both happening. And I've heard arguments on both sides of that fence, whether or not to include the pricing or to leave it out to encourage a phone call and an inquiry. I'm wondering what you see as kind of the most popular option, or what you think the best option is.
Well, certainly when it comes to populating your website and populating the listing sites, I absolutely recommend that people post their rents. You know, it really goes back to, you know, put yourself in the renter's shoes. You're on a listing site, or whatever your source of data is. You're probably searching on a mobile device today, and you may very well be sitting in front of the building. If you're holding back information, nothing frustrates the user more.
Yeah.
And that causes, more often than not, that will cause people to move on to the next property. Having the rent there will not cause them to move on to the next property unless the price didn't meet their needs. And the reality is that if $900 is too much rent because you were only looking to spend $850, I don't know that generating a phone call just because you withheld the rent is going to help you close that $900 sale. You know, so I'm a big proponent of show the rents and make the phone ring because the person on the other end of the line is genuinely interested in your property. They've already been, to some degree, they've already also been pre-qualified. You can look at it from that perspective too.
Yeah.
I mean, I ask people this all the time. Would you rather have 1,000 unqualified phone calls, or would you rather have 50 really highly qualified phone calls? You know, I personally, I'll take the 50 highly qualified phone calls because, you know, it's like, you know, shooting fish in a barrel, right? You know, it's easy pickings, whereas, you know, 1,000 leads could just be an administrative nightmare to work through. It's a lot of labor, a lot of time, and a lot of, you know, dealing. You're trying to sift out the good from the bad.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Jason, Leonard, thank you very much. For those, again, for our guests that are watching this, listening to this today, Jason Leonard, Landlord Web Solutions. I've got his contact information on the screen, and I can tell you, I've seen Jason's operations. He's got a phenomenal team, great team of experts ready to help you. Stephen, thank you very much. And once again, poem, I'm going to remember that. Paid, owned, earned. I love it. Really, guys, this has been an eye-opener for me. It really has. I sort of, well, I know what I don't know. And now I know that I know even less. But clearly, this is an area that all of us really have to be engaged in. We really have to understand this. And manage it. And if we can't do it ourselves, it's good to know that we've got experts such as yourselves that we can go to. So I encourage all of our guests today, please give these gents a phone call, follow up. I'm sure they wouldn't mind fielding any questions you may have as a result of this presentation. So thank you very much for joining us. You've been fantastic guests. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Take care. Well, thank you once again to our guests. Just some upcoming webinars. November 27th, Finding Negotiating Your Best Equity Deal. December 18th, we're doing something on due diligence. And then the 2013 Ontario Apartment Wrap-Up in Jan 2014. So that's going to be really interesting. We're always looking for good folks that we can co-broker with, so please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We've got some great information on our website, Rock APT Advisors, whereby we talk about our co-brokering program with Rock. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the sales that have taken place recently. A thanks to RealTrack. So number of sales, 385. Total value of sales to date, we're looking at 2.3 billion. Average price, nothing new here. We're north of 100,000, 124,000. Largest transaction, wow, this is a big one. 8 St. Thomas Street in Toronto, $22 million. Highest price per unit, Broadview Avenue at 225,000. 31% obviously of sales transactions have taken place in the GTA, and then we've got 25% in Eastern and Northern Ontario. So moving right along, here is that property at 882 Broadview Avenue, $225,000 per unit. Great location, very central, close to the downtown core. Great access to TTC, etc. If it were me, I think sixplex, this looks like it's going to be repositioned and some money spent behind the doors, increasing the rents. Here's a big one, University Apartments at 8 St. Thomas Street. This was, I believe it was sold by Minto to KingSett, and it is a condo site, obviously, when you consider purchase price per unit. So great location, prestige location, thanks to our friends for giving us that information. Sandy Mandel as well. We're moving on here to North York at 135,000. Good solid location. Again, north of $100,000 per unit. This one here in Burlington, I was actually somewhat surprised. I mean, we're looking at $155,000 per unit. Clearly, this is sort of a pension fund or REIT quality apartment building. But you can see that Burlington, we're creeping up, and we are at par. Rather, Burlington's at par with Toronto prices. Chatham, Ontario, towns here, 36,000. So clearly, you're buying this by the pound. London, Ontario, KIPS, 77,000. There are good bargains still to be had, or good value rather, in London and smaller markets such as that. Ottawa, very much like Toronto, $152,000 price per unit. This one here on Nelson Street. Ottawa, obviously, very, very strong market, and we can see that product doesn't last a long time, and it's bought up fairly quickly. We've got another one here on Friel Street in Ottawa, $107,000 per unit, 26 units. Again, Ottawa, $170,000 this time around, 44 units. So we're seeing prices creep up quite a bit in Ottawa as well. Now we are Hamilton and Niagara. It's 116 Robinson at 87,000. So some good value deals to be had in Hamilton. And for those of you that don't know, that the city, there's a concerted effort rather, to revitalize the city, the downtown core. So I think you're going to start seeing more and more transactions happening in Hamilton, and clearly it's becoming a more desirable place to invest. Here's another Hamilton building at 73,000 on 370 Concession Street. Thank you very much for joining us today. I don't know about you, but I found this piece on inbound marketing quite fascinating. Clearly, it's something that all of us have to take advantage of and to understand a little better. We look forward to hearing from you. Please shoot me a quick email. Let me know if there's a topic that you would like us to discuss. We're always interested in hearing from our guests, and thank you once again for joining us. Take care.